There is no statute in the Internal Revenue Code clearly and plainly imposing liability for the income tax on the typical working American. Payment of the income tax is voluntarily. The income tax is imposed only on taxable income that is derived from engaging in a privileged activity that is within the taxing authority of the federal government. When we work for a living, we are exercising a God-given, constitutional protected, tax-exempt right. That's not a privilege. Exercising our rights to labor for a living is not taxable. We should not include tax-exempt income in gross income. So just how truthful is the IRS account of income tax issues? Fact: there is no law making the typical working American liable for income tax. The typical working American is not required by law to keep records, render statements, or comply with regulations. Above all, he's not required by law to file income tax return. And if he does, he files income tax return, he is doing so voluntarily on his own accord. The IRS imprisoned many Americans whose only crime was to discover the truth about the inapplicability of the income tax to them, and to dare confront the government with the truth. According to the IRM, Internal Revenue Manual, only Supreme Court cases have the effect of law, equivalent to the code. Lower court cases are not binding on either citizen or the IRS. You see, Section 1 in the Internal Revenue Code makes no one liable for the income tax. A taxpayer is one who is subject to a tax. That's 26 U.S.C. 7701, subsection A and 14. Here's the golden question. Is it possible for most Americans to legally stop paying both federal and state income tax? Well, this applies to most Americans who live and work in the 50 states. It doesn't necessarily apply to Americans working for the federal government or those who work for the federal military installations. However, anyone who has entered into a contract with the IRS has to pay them, or he has to fulfill the contract unless he cancels all the contracts for fraud. This is how the IRS tricks you into becoming liable. See, IRS agents sees it in this light. By you sending a 1040 tax return to the IRS, number one, you voluntarily access yourself. Number two, you acquiesce to IRS jurisdiction. Number three, you become liable for federal income tax. And number four, you enter into a unilateral contract with them, which is rebuttable for lack of full disclosure, which constitutes fraud. Go to our website and learn more about the IRS.